we're gonna start out and I'm gonna put one die right here and one die over here. So I wanna make sure that I leave enough room. If I have some overlap, that's certainly fine. In fact, I think that might be cool if you draw one die sitting in front of the other one. So maybe I'm gonna put my die over in here. I'm looking, you know, the size of this leading edge of this die. What is that? 1, 2, 3.5, 4 inches. So I'm going to draw a 3.5, 4 inch line. This is not quite 2/3 of the way over on my page, but I want to see more of the left side of this cube. So I'm going to put a fairly shallow angle going to the left vanishing point. My proportion, I'll see more of the left side. I make sure I have some convergence, but my convergence will be less going in this direction. So that's, I've addressed my three cube rules. These are converging less because this is a shallower angle. I should see more of this side, I'll see less of this side. So this, I'm gonna make this a pretty steep angle, right? So if we just look at those angles, that's a steep angle. And what that means is that these lines will converge a lot quicker, and I won't see nearly as much of this side. So before we move forward, just check your proportion. Maybe even ask your neighbor if the proportion looks okay. We should still be sketching very lightly. Again, if you want to use, you can use whatever medium you want for this. As Shay mentioned, but we do want to see 3 line weight at the end of the day. I think I need to adjust my proportion a little bit, make it a little wider. So what's the difficulty in the die? Well, it really has to do, probably the biggest thing is proportion. Let's do this one. So I'm gonna put 2 on the left face. How do I find, I'm gonna put 2 dots over here on the left face. Now let's just analyze this proportion for just a second. If I just kind of look across here and divide this up, and if I think if there was another die in here, it would be right there. You know, I'm just looking at that proportion, and I'm wondering, you know, let's look at this diagonal proportion. If I come all the way out to the edges, this doesn't start really quickly, and there seems to be more space right in there. So I'm going to say that my ellipse is going to be somewhere about that wide. I'm going to put the center of my ellipse right here. Now, where is the minor axis for this ellipse? Right vanishing point. So this is facing left. So I'm going to carry this to the right vanishing point, which is almost in line with the edge of my cube. I'm going to rotate my page to give me the optimal angle. If you want to go ahead and start using your ellipse templates, that's certainly fine. But I'm using that to give me the angle. Now, I'm going to check the chord. How do I check the chord? I'm going to bring down a vertical, and I'm going to sketch a line towards the left vanishing point. And so that gives me these pizza pies. That looks pretty good. So let me guesstimate where I'm looking at this distance right here. I want to look into kind of a foreshortened version of that. I'm going to put my other die center right there. Same minor axis also is going towards the right vanishing point. If anything, would this ellipse be thinner or wider than the other one? Thinner or fatter? If anything, it'll be thinner. My angle is slightly off. Let me work on it. I'm going to find an adjusted center. Bring that down. Look at this. That also feels okay. Let's look at my proportion. Let me see if I need to adjust anything. That looks okay. All right, let's draw 3 along the top. So I'm gonna go from corner to corner. My distance will be, I'm gonna go from this corner to this corner to give me the center dot. There's my dot. You know, and it looks like it's almost equidistant, so I'm just gonna divide this in half and divide this in half. Those are my 3 centers of my ellipses. What's the minor axis for all 3 of these ellipses? What's the minor axis? I'm drawing ellipses on the top surface. What's the minor axis going to be? Straight up and down. It's the easy one, right? So I'm just going to go ahead and draw all 3 minor axes in. Are these going to be really fat ellipses or really skinny ellipses? Skinny ellipses. So you know, this one's difficult for me to see. I'm referencing this width right here. And I'll check the chords in just a second, but I'm using that minor axis. That one looks like it's going to be off. I'm using that minor axis to help me with the angle. And then to check this, and I probably need to go ahead, oh, I may not have an ellipse template that's thin enough. Let me line it up, minor axis, center, it's about that same width, feels pretty good. I don't think this is thin enough, which might be a challenge. To check this ellipse with the chord, how do I do it? Let me zoom in. I want one line going towards one vanishing point and through the center. I could choose either vanishing point, but I'm going to sketch that going towards the right vanishing point, going through the center of my ellipse, and then I'm going to come back this way. The other vanishing point, vanishing line, and you know what? It looks like my pizza slices could be, they're slightly off. And so let me check a 20. I actually think that 20 looks better. It's opened it up in this direction. I think my line going through the center is slightly off. Let me fix that. So there's that ellipse. These will probably be the same as they move towards the horizon line. Maybe they'll get thinner. And in fact, I'm gonna neck down to the 15 right here. It should also get a little bit smaller because of foreshortening. So I've gone to the 15 degree. And in fact, I'm gonna move down to this one. Make it 15 degree as well. And I'm gonna check this back one with my chord. And it did. So even though those are pretty close together, that foreshortening and that moving back, this is a 20 degree and that's a 15 degree. I could pick or choose here. This is getting a little tight, so I think I'd go with the smaller one just to make sure that I've got room. while y'all catch up, I'm gonna go ahead and work in these ellipses with an ellipse template. I'm going to do it lightly because I want to refine my line work pretty well towards the end. If I look, my chord is in here. I'm going to try, this is a 50 degree, I'm going to try a 45 and see if it looks better with my chord. And it does. So even again, we've done a number of drawings where the ellipse hasn't changed much from one to the next when they're close together. This one has changed considerably. It's a 50 here, a 45 there. Mine's a 20 here and a 15 back there. All right, so we now need to do 6 ellipses over here. If I want to maintain that height, I'm going to draw a line from the center of this one out to here, and then a line towards the right vanishing point. Do the same thing down here from the center of this ellipse. I'm going to come over along a left vanishing line, then go back to the right vanishing point. This is giving me only one thing. It's really just giving me the height. Now I could come here and wrap, similar to what you guys were doing with the doorknobs, and I can come here and wrap. And that really should give me the grid, and these points where they intersect should be where the center of my ellipses are. And then I can guesstimate right here in the middle. I hope I've left enough room. This is one of the challenges to this die. So my minor axis for this one, going towards the left vanishing point, towards the left vanishing point, towards the left vanishing point. That gives me the angle. I could really draw this over the top edge and then that back that way to find what the height of this ellipse should be if I want it to match this one. And I'm going to run out of room. My proportion on these die, well, it's going to be real close. Let me check that chord. Chord looks good, chord looks good, chord looks good. These would get a little bit thinner and a little bit smaller because of foreshortening. I'm gonna guess this is somewhere in the neighborhood of 25 degrees. And that's telling me, my chord is telling me that may not be thin enough. So let's go to 20. That's better. So one of the things I'm paying attention to is that dot right in the middle. That dot right in the middle of my ellipse. to make sure that it's in the right place. I don't know, maybe I need to go back to 25. I'm looking at the pie pieces and they're a little small. I'm somewhere in the middle. I gotta pick and choose here. We'll go with that. I like the thinner one because I'm not gonna run into the other die. So I'm gonna pick and choose the 20. This one might be just a little bit bigger. Say that again. Okay, because of that foreshortening on these two surfaces, I have to be careful. I need to make sure that these are getting smaller as they go back. I'm gonna take just a minute and begin to clean this drawing up. You know what? I'm gonna do the same thing here. I'm just gonna make sure with a straight edge right here that I've got all my centers lined up. And all my points. So this is gonna shift this one a little bit. Make sure that my minor axis is clear and defined. That one's on the exact same line as that other one. So it is going to shift this bottom one down just a little bit, just a hair. And what you'll notice, because this is like a little dimple, I am already putting some of my 3 line weight into this drawing, just right in here. So I'm going around lightly, and then at the top of this ellipse, I'm putting a little bit darker line as this wraps around, so that it almost begins to insinuate that there's a depression there, that it's concave. And I'm going to do that with my other ellipses. I think I had a 20 and a 15 up here. The 20 was right here. I believe these 3 are smaller. So this one is my 1 1/16. 20 degree. This is my 1 inch. Oh, it might even be, this one is my 15/16 20 degree. So it got smaller going back. That's what I meant by there's so much foreshortening taking place on this surface and this surface that they will maybe get smaller. I did not change any of the degrees on this side. Thank you. But just, you know, continuing to think about those things. This ellipse is 1 1/16.
What was it that you said we should do to make it look concave?
I'll show you a little bit more about that in just a second. But if you look at this ellipse, I'm putting like a little bit more of a darker line on this side of that ellipse and a lighter line on this side of that ellipse, insinuating that it's darker. In a minute, we're actually going to draw in some contour lines that will help us see that dimple.
You're doing that for the top too?
I am. So it's the edges of these ellipses that are closest to the viewer I'm making darker because they're more crisp. And then I believe I stepped back into a 15-degree ellipse for these next two. So if you're wondering about the line weight thing, watch this for just a second again. And I'll zoom in. So I'm going to leave a real light line weight on the back side, and I'm going to put a lot more pressure right here, and maybe even go over it a couple of times as it wraps around so that it's darker and heavier here and lighter back there. To revisit the question on whether or not ellipses with a vertical minor axis get smaller, when they're all in line and share the same exact minor axis, no, they do not. But these are stepping back along 3 different minor axes, and this third one is further away from me, so this ellipse is indeed smaller than this ellipse. So again, maybe the top of this one and towards the viewer I'm going to make a little bit darker and this lighter. Okay, do y'all need a second to catch up? The last thing I want to do to this drawing is I want to show off the contours that take place. And so on this photograph, I'm going to show you what I want to do. One thing I want to do is I want to just draw a contour line, which again, some people call it a section line, some people call it a contour line, but that just wraps around my die And I'm just going to say from top to bottom and from front to back, as opposed to wrapping around the whole thing. The last thing that I want to do is I want to show the beginning and the end of the radius. And so look at the shadow that's being cast on this, and we're almost going to follow that. So I want to show where the radius starts. And then what do we do in the corner? Well, in this corner, we're actually essentially just going to draw a border around where this die would be flat. And then it would come back around this way. And then the top surface, I'd do the same thing where I'd draw essentially just a border where this thing is flat. And what that does is it leaves the corner somewhat undefined. Let me zoom in. So we're going to do this to our die. We're going to show that, now these should not be dark. These should not be dark, but you're basically going to put those lines and a contour line that runs through the middle and goes back. This would show off the dimple and continue back and then start to fall. We're going to do that on our die. And I'm actually going to put that contour line in first because it's simple. Now, I'm almost, like, my sketch is done being constructed for the most part. So I'm going to go ahead and resort to some tools to make this nice. So very lightly, I'm going to draw this front section in. And down here would be a small part of an ellipse. Here, this would be somewhat of a small part of an ellipse. And I'm going to draw that back. This has to go back, and it really should go straight through the center of that ellipse if I have everything constructed correctly. And here I'm just going to draw kind of a dimple going down. And then that radius would fall off back there. So all this is doing is giving me a little bit of a contour line. It would be better actually if I had put an ellipse right here to show that contour, but I can see it over here. And so now I'm going to use where the beginning and the end of this fillet that I created, I'm going to draw that, again, it's really just a frame that wraps around where this die face is completely flat. So it'll be the beginning and the end of my fillet. This would be a portion of an ellipse. It'd be the corner. And so when you do these radiuses and stuff, look at this real quick. And I did not hit it perfect, but when I draw this fillet going from this line into this one, that quite simply is a part of an ellipse. And it's, if you think about how large that ellipse would be, it would be a really tiny ellipse, but it would have a minor axis going towards the right vanishing point. I don't need to construct that. I just need to know what's happening with ellipses right here. And it means it would be the shallow portion, the slow portion of my ellipse. Now down here, think about this ellipse, shrink it, put it down here in the corner. Down here, it would be the tight. Down here would be the tight portion of the tight quadrant of my ellipse. So it would go from here, and I'll see the beginning, I won't see the end of this radius. But this would be the accelerated portion of my ellipse. Does that make sense? And these are just small little details that can make or break a drawing. So now I'm going to put a hard silhouette line. I'm going to stop shy of the corner because remember, I don't have a hard corner. But I'm going to put a line weight. This should probably be a 3 down there. I'm going to go ahead and draw in. I've stepped up just a little bit from my original crisp line. And again, I'm going to stop shy of the corner because I need to show off how it's rounded off right there. So my fillet on this side will end somewhere about right there maybe. This will be the tight portion of an either even thinner ellipse, so it's going to have to curl back really quickly. This will be the shallow portion of a thin ellipse. I'm going to draw this back silhouette before I draw that fillet line. This is where using a Sharpie is going to help me clean up my drawing a little bit. I won't see much of that fillet back there. Up here I'll see some. And I'm going to draw a radius that leads over in this direction. That's the slow portion of that thinner ellipse. Here's my corner. There's my vanishing line. It's going to go back. This will be a real tight portion of an ellipse here. This will be a tight portion of an ellipse wrapping. Tight portion of an ellipse wrapping. Again, I won't see a lot back here. That fillet is rolling away from me. Real tight portion of an ellipse, real thin right there. And I made a pretty critical error leaving a real crisp corner back there where it should be rounded off. Again, if I come back and give this 2 or 3 line weight, I should be able to clean that up pretty well. So I'm gonna try. The acceleration, let me ask you. You mean right here? Or right here? I have no idea. I'm guessing. Down here, it should be a part of essentially a sphere. If you think about, if it was a kind of pure, it would be a part of a sphere. And that isn't going to hold true for every corner, but if it's kind of a pure radius, And because we have a couple of minutes, I'm going to go ahead and yes. I want you to draw a second one before the end of the day at a different angle. So I'll get you started on the different angle, but you'll need to work in all the ellipses. And you don't have to do the angle that I'm going to do. So I'm just coming back and exaggerating this just a little bit. What I just noticed that I could do fairly easily to help define the shape a little bit better is I could come back in and with a 1 line weight or 1/2 sketch in that dimple right in there. It's not critical. I actually wish I hadn't have done that. Okay. Let's move on just very quickly to setting that second die up. So I want it to be at a slightly different angle. I want it to be sitting on that same surface. I'm actually just going to construct, if I think about my original die and where it was, I'm going to draw just straight across to find where the corner of my next one's going to be. I want to put the corner of that die about right there. I'm going to draw a leading edge. And that leading edge, if it's in line and it's that same distance away from me, then I can use this to pick the height of that leading edge. And then what I want to do with this one, I'm going to make it easy on myself. I'm going to draw my angles out. I want it to be less than this angle, and I want it to be greater, the edges that I create, less than this angle and greater than that angle. So I'm going to sketch out like that. I'm going to make these equal. I'm going to finish my cube. I think I need to make that angle a little bit higher. The judgment here is, will my convergence on these meet at the horizon line? And it's tough to see, and it's to some degree a feel thing. I'm going to see less or more of this side, I'll see less of the other side. Again, if my angle here is the same, my angle here should be about the same. I should see about the same of each of these die, so I need to open that up just a little bit more. My convergence should be equal on both sides, and this point really should line up with that point. So what I'm sharing with the first die and the second die is the surface with which they sit on. and the horizon line where my points would ultimately meet in space, my vanishing points. Now again, you don't have to use that die. If you don't want to, you could put a mirror line, and you could figure out how you could put an exact mirror of this die over here. But notice how this one is shorter because it's behind it. So this height and this height are basically the same, but smaller than this.